Welcome back to Mik'd Up. We're brought to you by Sterling Automotive. I'm proud and excited to talk to our next guest, Carter Karels. He is Florida State beat writer for NoleSports.com. He has a little bit of a unique perspective because he covered Notre Dame, Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, before he went over to Florida State. Carter, I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Are you in Louisiana? Are you coming down for the weekend? Are you staying in Florida in Tallahassee? What's the deal?
Still in Tallahassee, but I'm driving over to New Orleans Saturday morning. Gonna try to hang out, just enjoy.
Yeah.
I've already been recommended a couple places.
I was about to say,
Katie's
just
was
coming
one place.
Just coming into New Orleans and trying to hang out is not probably going to work out for you. You're going to just put your drinking shoes on.
Did you say Canes?
No. Katie's and Lil
okay.
Dizzy's were like the two places that were recommended.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys
those
would
are good.
sign
Listen,
off on those.
There's a lot of spots in New Orleans you can walk down the street, and if you just see people in there, it's probably pretty good. So it's not going to be there's not going to be a lack of energy. That's for sure. Before we get to the Florida State LSU matchup and kind of what you expect to see and things that you've kind of seen throughout the camp, let's talk a little bit about when you cover Notre Dame. Obviously, Brian Kelly is here at LSU. He's making the transition from Notre Dame to LSU. Have you noticed a difference in his personality as far as how he conducted himself there as opposed to how he's conducting himself here at LSU?
Well, I think I've seen a change. I guess just there's been a change in his personality really since like 2017. I think the national perception of him is still a little off. I think some people from the outside still think of him as kind of the purple-faced monster who yells all the time. But after that 4-8 season he had at Notre Dame, he really kind of looked from within and changed his ways and became way more relaxed. Didn't call plays anymore. Really made the right hires as his coordinators and became a lot more involved with the team and things like that. So ever since that moment, he's been a lot more, and I've kind of seen that come with him from Notre Dame to LSU, and he definitely does seem more like energetic and happy. Even from the first press conference he had at LSU, he was talking about just the advantages that he'd get at LSU over Notre Dame, from the nutrition staff to the facilities to just the overall resources he's going to get. At Notre Dame, it's pretty hard to recruit at a super high level. I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere and you're in the cold, and in Louisiana, I mean, you're in like the freaking hotbed of recruiting. So
yeah,
he's definitely more excited and pretty happy about what he's kind of inheriting.
Well, we're excited to have him because we have a guy. We've had a couple coaches, both coaches we've had has won national championships. We actually have a guy now who you feel like is pretty strategic in the way he goes about things, how he talks to the media, how he makes his decisions, and that's something that I think we've been yearning for over here. And speaking, talking about strategy and what he's trying to do, he hasn't named the starter. Obviously, the team here knows the starter. How is Florida State preparing for that? And watching them go through last week, obviously they had kind of a tune-up game in week 0. How do you find that to be extremely important for them, or do you find that to be kind of like almost like a scrimmage type of atmosphere?
Yeah, we asked head coach Mike Norvell how they're preparing for both, if it's changed the preparation, and he kind of played a gamesmanship card back at Brian Kelly. He's just kind of like, nope, doesn't change anything.
Right.
And he kept it, short and sweet. He didn't want to really reveal anything. What we've seen in practice, I mean, it's pretty standard. They have, their set of players and scout team that are trying to, mimic Jane Daniels, Garrett Nussmeier, some other players on the team. So I think what they've kind of tried to do is really dive into their background. So Nussmeier, it's looking into his huddle tape from when he was at Flower Mound Marcus. With, Jaden Daniels, it's his time at Arizona State, and even probably his high school tape as well. So LSU also has got 16 transfers from what I understand.
Yeah.
So, and a DC that was, and on the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think it's been like a confusing puzzle that Florida State's tried to work out. So they're trying to just get as much information as possible. As far as the week 0 game against Duquesne, I don't think it hurts you, but I don't think it helps you a whole ton. I mean, Duquesne's an FCS program.
Right.
It was a blowout, but I think it helps in the sense of just kind of getting your feet up underneath you, getting that extra confidence, kind of knocking out the rust before game 1 or week 1, I should say. So I think it helps a little, but nothing crazy.
Did Florida State get out of the game pretty healthy? Do they have anybody on the injury report, anybody that is questionable to play for this week that would put them at a disadvantage, maybe a star player, anything like that?
Yeah, their top receiver, Johnny Wilson, left kind of early in the game with what looked to be a foot injury, maybe a leg injury, something like that. Looked like he could have gone back into the game, might have held him out for precautionary reasons. They haven't disclosed sort of a timetable for his return, but that'll definitely be someone to watch. At center, they were already down their third-team center left the game with an apparent injury. They think there's optimism that their actual starter, Smith, could come back, but that's something to watch because, I mean, that LSU defensive line, even if Florida State was healthy on the offensive line, I think LSU, has the chance to dominate them. But if they're on their third-team center, man, it could be a long day.
That was actually my next question. Obviously, you played Duquesne as one of our guys on our show likes to call him Duquesne. They played them last week, and y'all ran for 450 yards or whatever it was. 4 guys had over 100 yards rushing. Jordan Travis is an extremely athletic quarterback. With the front 7 that LSU has and the front 4 that LSU has, obviously running the football is going to be a little bit harder. Do you have confidence, or does the team have confidence in Jordan Travis being able to throw the ball and attack the outside and attack the cornerbacks that maybe are the question mark of the defense here at LSU?
Yeah, I think that's probably where the advantage could be. I mean, Jordan Travis has really taken a step forward this offseason. Mike Norvell actually called this past game the best game he's had in his career. I don't know if I'd agree with that. I think he had a pretty good game against Miami last year, but definitely is playing his best football. Way better deep ball, just way more confidence, a lot more aggressive. And I think the change for this team has been at receiver because this is a crazy stat. Last 2 years, Florida State has not had a 400-yard receiver.
Wow.
Which, I mean, it's just
all
unbelievable.
Year?
I mean, they've truly all year.
I mean, you have running backs that get 400 yards
yards
receiving.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nuts to me. And it just shows how bad kind of the program was when Norvell inherited them. They've gotten some guys, though, that I think are capable of getting there this year. I mentioned Johnny Wilson. Micah Pittman out of Oregon is another kid. And then Malik McClain was a 4-star recruit. He's now a true sophomore. So I think they've got a few guys capable of doing it. It's a better wide receiving core. They were absolutely the worst in the ACC last year. This year, I think they're probably pretty average in the ACC, which, I mean, going from worst to average, to me, that's a pretty significant leap.
Right,
and so that I think they could, be effective in the passing game, but we'll have to see where Johnny Wilson is.
I mean, as you kind of just detailed a good bit of the offense right there for the listeners, if you were writing the scouting report on this team and you were kind of putting out there what you're going to see, can you give us what you see in this Florida State team as what you expect to see go out there on a Sunday night?
Yeah, so starting with the weaknesses, I think offensive line's one of them. On the other side of the ball, kind of worried about the cornerbacks a little bit, which, I mean, LSU has some pretty dang good receivers. So yeah. I think those are the 2 matchups that LSU can exploit. As far as where Florida State is strong at, I think their quarterback is much better. I think their running game is definitely their strength this year. They got 3 running backs.
Wait, you're saying the quarterback? You're saying their quarterback is much better than he he was in the past, or he's much better than whatever LSU is going to put out there? Just wondering. I'm just wondering. I don't know. I'm just saying. I just want to know.
He's better than what he was
There you go.
in the
Okay.
past.
All right. I'm just checking. I just want to know. I'm just checking.
He's trying to set you up.
So-
Don't fall into his trap.
No, I don't want you to get set up. I don't want people. I'm trying to just check it.
I'm about to get bullied if he's better than he is in the past. Running game, I think, is the strength of this team. They've got 3 running backs that are pretty dang good. Trey Benson out of Oregon, the new transfer with the team. Trayshawn Ward, a former walk-on, and then Lawrence Toafili, all pretty special. They were the 3 for the first time. Florida State had 3 100-yard rushers in the game, and those were the 3. On the defense side of the ball, I mentioned cornerback as a weakness. It's almost like nitpicking because I think this defense doesn't have a ton of glaring weaknesses. That would just be the one weakness I would probably identify. But they don't have a Jermaine Johnson player like they had last year. They're not going to have an ACC Defensive Player of the Year, first-round draft pick kind of guy. But they don't have a lot of weaknesses. And they added some pretty good transfers. They had Jared Verse, who picked up a sack against Duquesne. And they got a linebacker in Tatum Bethune, who was an all-conference player at UCF, had over 100 tackles last year. So they've added some good pieces to that defense. Cornerback's the one position I think is a little shaky, but overall should be a pretty good defense this year.
You spoke about Mike Norvell a little bit earlier and what he was talking about and a little bit of gamesmanship he showed back towards Brian Kelly. Have you – obviously the head coach at Florida State over the last, I don't know, I guess since Jimbo left, has kind of been a revolving door. Nobody's really kind of solidified their spot. They haven't had sustained success. Mike Norvell, do you feel like this is his last chance to kind of build some momentum going into the year? And if he doesn't have a rebound year from last year, he's kind of on his way out?
Deion's waiting.
Yeah, Deion is – listen, I thought Deion was going to be the guy this year, but they gave him another year.
Yeah, I think Florida State is trying to manage their expectations. I think to them, just a winning season is successful. Like that's truly how bad the program was when Norvell took over. He had 3 wins his first year, 5 wins last year. I think if they can get to 6 or 7, he's all good. I think where you get in trouble is the losing season. But they haven't had a winning season since 2017 or maybe 2016, one of those 2 years. That opener they won last week was the first opener they won since 2016. So, I mean, truly, just not just the players on the roster, but the culture needed a total rebuild. And he took over in 2020 with COVID. And, I mean, it was a bad situation. And I don't think Willie Taggart left him with a great program. And he's been rebuilding it. He's really hammered the transfer portal pretty hard, and I think he's hit on a lot of guys that they've gotten there, but still a lot of ways to go. And winning on Sunday certainly would be a massive win for Florida State, probably one of their biggest ones in many years. But it's. So
do you think the leash is a little longer now, like this year? You don't think that this is his last year?
I think
unless it's a god awful season, obviously.
Yeah, unless you have another Jacksonville State situation, right. A 4-win year. He still has a few years left on his contract. They're still on the books with Willie Taggart. Florida State isn't just made of money these days. So, certainly I think it has to take an absolute disaster for him to be gone.
You mentioned how he's kind of tried to change the culture and that you have a history of both these guys now. And I was going to ask Florida State faced Notre Dame with Brian Kelly last year. Does he put any stock into that? Does Mike Norvell put any stock into that game, what he can take from it? And then I have a 2-parter, which the second part would be you covering Brian Kelly. What can LSU fans expect to see from a Brian Kelly / Mike Denbrock-led offense? Because we've only talked about quarterbacks on our end. We haven't really dove into scheme or anything. So I'm wondering what LSU fans are expecting to see come week 1.
Yeah, Your first question, I'm now forgetting it. What was your first question?
Any advantage to Mike Norvell playing Brian Kelly already in terms of how their little repartee going back and forth, looking back at the Notre Dame Florida State game week 1 last year?
Yeah, I think so. He faced him, I believe, a couple times. He faced Mike Denbrock actually at Memphis twice in 2019. And I believe Florida State's defensive coordinator at Adam Fuller, he was at Memphis in 2019 when they faced Mike Denbrock at Cincinnati. So they have some games, some things they can take. I think, truly, I think they're looking at everything. That's kind of what they've shared with us, is that they're not leaving any game unturned. They're going to look at everything. So I do wonder what that process looks like. You could probably be like chasing ghosts, What'd you say?
You got to look at some Arizona State tape. I mean, if Jane Daniels is going to be the starter after play, you have to go back to an Herm Edwards-led offense.
Yeah, no, you got to look at everything, and but there's so much to look at. It's like, at what point are you just chasing ghosts and getting overwhelmed? I think there's a degree to it where it's probably a little too much, but I think it'll help just a couple of those games, but probably more looking at the quarterbacks too and their skill sets. Mike Norvell had mentioned that preparation isn't really different with both. And even Brian Kelly mentioned, the offense, the play calling doesn't look too different with both. I don't know if I totally agree with that. I mean,
I'm with you. I don't know if I totally agree with that either.
I'm like, Jaden Daniels is a fantastic runner, and Nussmeier is not a statue by any means. He can scramble, throw on the run from what I've read, but not going to be running for 700 yards. That's for sure. So
no doubt.
Yeah, not sure I agree with that. Now I can't remember the second part of your question.
Oh no, that's right.
That's okay. I think you hit him.
No, that's bad on my end. What can LSU expect from a Brian Kelly offense and a Mike Denbrock offense? That's all I want to see. We only talked about quarterbacks. I want to see what the scheme looks like.
No. Let me tell you why he's asking you this question. Because we've had a conversation about it, and Lloyd is trying to get you to prove his point that he made about scheme a couple days ago. So go ahead and answer the question. I know exactly why you're asking him this.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame was almost a little specific. Like, you had to almost tailor your offense around the personnel, because with them, the two positions that Notre Dame recruits better than almost anybody was offensive line and tight end. And so their offense was built around their O-line, their tight ends. They'd involve, as many. I mean, I remember plays that had 4 or 5 tight ends in a single play. And I'd go, oh my gosh. And the one position Brian Kelly couldn't seem to really recruit at a super high level. He had some guys in there for sure, but wide receiver was a little bit tricky. So they didn't have a lot of high-flying guys. It wasn't super explosive of an offense. But I think at LSU, I don't know if you can compare the two offenses, because I think at LSU, certainly this year, you're going to have guys that are, like Keyshawn Butte. Notre Dame never had a guy like that.
Right.
So, I think it'll look a little bit different. And obviously Mike Denbrock was different than Tommy Rees too.
Absolutely. I'm on the same page as you. Lloyd's not.
Well, she doesn't have 4 tight ends, so they have to go somewhere else.
Man, I really do appreciate your time. Last question before you go. Have you prepared yourself for your trip to New Orleans? I know we talked about it a little bit before. I know that you have kind of started doing some research on LSU's pregame hype songs. And I would say I guess it's "Bitch I'm from Louisiana," right? Is the name of the song, not "From Louisiana."
Bitch.
And have you immersed yourself with the actual culture of New Orleans and Louisiana?
I've been to an LSU game in 2013. Incredible, absolutely amazing environment. It's
what
my
game?
favorite place.
What game?
My favorite venue I've been to. Texas A&M. It's where I went.
Oh, that's
to school.
a good one. Okay.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. The result of the game wasn't too much fun, but it was a fun environment. And then actually, I went to New Orleans this past either November or December, and y'all are gonna think I'm lying, but I actually did meet and run into Brian Kelly, and it was like a week after he had been hired by LSU, and it was crazy. And we talked for quite a bit, but it was it was fun running into him, and I mean, it was literally like maybe 4 days after we'd been hired. Kind of wild.
Well, man, I'm looking forward to this weekend. I know you're looking forward to this weekend. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on and talking with us. Hopefully, we can have you on at some point again throughout the course of the year. If Brian Kelly is raising some questions, we'll call you because you're the expert. You've covered him for a long time.
Or if he does well.
Or if he does well. We'll talk it through. I appreciate it, man, and hopefully I'll see you this weekend. Enjoy it.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yep, thank you.
Do you know what you're getting into this weekend? Is that why you're driving, because you feel like you might miss your flight?
Yeah, well, they want us to drive. Newspapers, you know.
Oh,
So-
you're on deadline. You're on
That's right.
deadline.
Yeah, that's right. All right,
Yeah,
man. Take
yeah,
it easy.
yeah.
We'll see you this weekend.
Alrighty. Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
Yep. Thank you.